Good morning. Hi, everybody. Welcome. We are so glad to start the day with you. And this is a little unusual for us. We typically do a little bit later in the day, but it's such an important topic that we wanted to give everybody time to really focus, hopefully at the desk before things start getting a little busy, a little crazy. Before I say anything else, my name is Lydia Wommack. I'm the marketing director here at INFINITI Fleet Safety Training, and we're going to send the replay out. I know that's a common question for everyone. Yes, everyone will get a replay video from this because it's really good information, and we want you to be able to digest it and kind of come back to it time and again. So we will send that after the end of the webinar this morning. So why are we here? The operational costs of staying in business just seem to keep going up. Insurance keeps rising, maintenance costs keeps rising. Seems like everywhere you turn, money going out the door is rising. And even tech stacks are increasing and everyone's adopting more and more technology to address issues, and that's adding to the expense side of the business. But I think the question is profitability growing along with it? Um, we actually know that safety can be a place that generates a return on investment. And so that's why we asked Jay to join us today. Jay is the CEO of our company, has a history in the oil field, has a history in other markets, always looks at outside industries to see what's working there and what can be applied here. And we invited him to talk today about how to turn safety from a cost center to a profit center. We've seen it done before, and it actually is, it's not easy, but it is very common sense to do that. So we invited Jay to join us and share. And please join us over in the chat. I'd love to hear about who's here. Any questions you have, I'll lift them up to Jay in the conversation because we'd like to make this an open one. In fact, the next time we do this, we might just have cameras on for everyone so everyone can just kind of ask questions and it can be more of a roundtable conversation. But without further ado, thank you again so much for joining us. And Jay, hit us. What do you have?
Thank you, Lydia. I appreciate that. That's quite the introduction. I did work in the banking industry, and I've worked in the oil field and the brokerage industry and different industries in the past. This first slide, that is a very broad claim. Number one, in return on safety, because we invented the way to make safety pay. I was sitting on an airplane one afternoon and I was talking to the CFO of a 30,000 employee company, and they're not trucking, but they have ambulance drivers and they have helicopter pilots and they have airplane pilots. And I started talking about what we do is INFINITI Fleet Safety Training. Well, we're in fleet safety training, and what we do is we decided we would start looking at targeting line items on the P&L and balance sheet and turn safety into an asset class as opposed to a cost class. And most CFOs, most C-suites, most owners look at safety as an expense. And they look at safety as a check the box. And so we look at it and said, let's start taking a look at the P&L and the balance sheet, and let's start looking at what really is going to drive revenue and what's going to drive more profitability in a company. Because right now, what we're all seeing is we're spending a heck of a lot more money on technology in the cab of a truck, and we're losing more money per mile. So with that being said, let me define return on safety. It equals reduced losses plus improved efficiency divided by the training investment. So effectively, whatever you're spending on training right now, if you can reduce your losses, now if we can improve efficiencies, and I'm going to go through some examples of things that we've done in the past and what clients have done in the past. And I'm going to tell you a really, really good story that happened in the late 2007, 2008 era, and it improved the operating ratio so much that it was an incredible story. You're already spending money on safety. Do we help fleets structure that existing spend so it safeguards the company and compounds financial performance at the same time? And when I say compounds, I can tell you a story about our own company where we spent $12,000 and we still have over 1.5 million and counting coming in the door because of that $12,000 spend on training and on processes and making sure that we follow the same guidelines every single time we do something. That is quite the return. And I can actually talk to anybody individually about how we did that. So here's the everybody should have a quote. Everybody should have a quote. This is my quote. Your greatest asset and your greatest liability is the behavior of your employees. And if you don't believe that, think about the accents that we've seen happening down in Florida in the last 6 months with the people that didn't know how to speak English and they kill folks. So the behavior of your employees is your greatest asset or your greatest liability. So what we want to do is we want to focus on the behavior and behavioral change of your employees when we start looking at some of these items. So quickly, this is who I am. We've been in business 26 years. We've delivered 188 million training sessions to over 3.5 million employees and 5,000 fleets or 5,000 companies. What's interesting is when we started doing this, the numbers started speaking to us and we started looking at trends in the industry based on those training sessions and based on those companies and based on those fleets. And they started giving us some real world information. So I want to jump right in to a great story of behavioral change because the behavior of employees is critical. Now, everybody, if you don't have a mentor, you need to get one. And I had a mentor when I first started this company, and he was in the transportation industry, and he had been around for a long time. And I could walk in his office and I could say, "Hey, Tony, I've got an idea." And about half the time, he would look at me and say, "That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of." And the other half of the time, he would say, "That may work. Let's try that. Let's see what happens." So I walked in his office in 2007, and this is ancient history because we have to have the facts and the numbers that lead up to where we are. I walked in his office in 2007 and said, "Tony, I've got a really crazy idea." And at the time, Tony, let me give you some background on him. He had a 1,400 truck company. He had started with one truck with he and his wife, and he had built it up over the years. And I walked in and said, "Tony, do you keep records on your most fuel efficient drivers?" And he said, "Yeah, I do." "Why?" And I said, "Well, I want to see if we can use some common sense approach and improve fuel efficiency across the board and improve your accidents and you lessen your accidents if we can get your people to drive more fuel efficient." He said, what are you thinking?" I said, "Well, what I'd like to do is interview your top 5 most fuel efficient drivers." Now, I know on this webinar right now, we have some companies that have anywhere from 10 trucks all the way up to 1,000 trucks on this webinar right now. So if you're keeping these records, think about this process. So Tony gave me the 5 most fuel efficient drivers, and it was a fun event. And I'm going to tell you the entire story here of how it happened. We took those 5 fuel efficient drivers, and what we wanted to do was find out how they drove so fuel efficiently. Now, here's the deal. Nobody wants to listen to some engineer from Freightliner or Peterbilt tell you how to drive a truck. And nobody wants somebody in the ivory tower telling them how to drive a truck more fuel efficient. They want to hear it from their peers. They want to hear it from the fellow truck drivers that are out there. And that makes sense. And so all we did, we have a model and it's our protocol. And our protocol is short, sweet, simple, to the point. So what we did is we put the camera on these 5 different drivers and we just let them talk about how they drive fuel efficient. Just talk about it. We wanted to model their behavior. We took the 5 most fuel efficient. We wanted to model their behavior. We put the camera on them for about 6 hours, 5 or 6 hours. And then we edited it down to 26 short, sweet, and to the point videos and curriculum classes that we put on our system that would remind them how to drive more fuel efficient. And here's what happened. We cut it down to 26, 2 to 3 minutes. We wanted them to be able to go log on, take the curriculum, acknowledge they had done it with the test, log out, and we wanted 26 every week, one a week for half a year to remind them of what was going to happen and how they could drive more fuel efficient. So I want you to think about the model that we just did. We modeled the most fuel efficient. We did it short and sweet and to the point, which, by the way, we were using this same concept of short, sweet, and to the point 6 years before MIT came out with their study that said, "Oh, this is the way to get behavioral change among employees." We've been doing it for 6 years, and we did it with a common sense approach. I'm going to sidestep here and tell you a quick story. I want you to imagine that you have a 15-year-old son, because I have in the past had a 15-year-old son. And it, Beavis and Butthead, picture them. I want you to imagine that on January the 1st, you walk into your 15-year-old son and you say to that 15-year-old son, this year, son, we're going to do it differently. This year, I want you to make your bed, clean the room, bathe the dog, brush your teeth, take a shower, take the garbage out, mow the yard, and I'm going to check back with you on December the 31st. And we're going to see how that happens. Now, when I'm in front of a live audience, everybody laughs at that because we all know that's not going to happen. We want short, sweet reminders. So, number one, common sense, short and sweet, because the attention span of a gnat is what we have now. I think they say 47 seconds is the actual attention span that we have today. I'm not sure if it's that low, but it's fairly low. The other thing we wanted to do was make sure that are you smarter than a fifth grader? Remember that TV show? Are you smarter than a fifth grader? By the way, if you watch that show, you may find out that you're not as smart as the fifth graders are. However, we wanted to keep it simple and to the point. And that's what we did. Simple and to the point. And so we deployed it over the next 26 weeks at Tony's company. And Tony's company improved their profitability. They improved their fuel efficiency by 13%. Now, I want you to recognize this was not compliance at pulling into the right truck stop where they had a more fuel efficient price. This was actual fuel efficiency, 13%. Now, I'm going to show you another slide here in a minute that talks about we were so excited by that number that we made it generic for all of our clients at the time. We made it generic. And the ones that used it generically got a 3% return. Another lesson here. When you're going to do something, if you can use your equipment, if you can use your logos, if you can use your people, you're going to get a much higher rate of return. Now, 3% generic was good. Go do the math. If you're running 9,000 miles a month per truck and you can get a 3% fuel efficiency, start doing the math. Now, I've had people that walked up to me and said, Jay, that was back in the day. Now we have these automatic trucks. We don't need that. Actually, you do. See, I play a little game. In my Suburban, I keep the fuel efficiency and I want to know exactly how many miles per gallon I'm getting. And I'm really proud that I've got over 20 plus miles to the gallon. And my wife gets in the car and I start looking at the number and it drops down to 16 or 17. Well, it's an automatic. So how you drive fuel efficiency makes a difference. And if you can train people and keep it top of mind, and you can use this same model of modeling, short, sweet, and to the point, long reminders, and you can have an impact on any line item that's critical in your department or in your company. Any line item. Now, Tony did so well with this program that he signed a contract with an outside firm to come in and look at every single line item on his P&L and balance sheet. And when I'm in front of a stage, I actually take all that information because we worked with him on that information to deploy it at his company. And it's a stack of papers. It's about this big and it probably weighs about 20 pounds. And I like to drop it on the desk so it gets an impact. But he spent $830,000. And the end game for Tony, by the way, there's that slide real quick. The fuel savings, 13%. That's a big lesson, by the way. If you don't get anything else out of today, that's a big lesson. Custom content, use your own content. And if you need help, we have a video production department that can come in and help you do this. 13 versus 3. 3's good. And I've seen some of the people in the average group of 3 get up to 7 or 8%, but 13 with your own. Here's what Tony did. He spent $830,000. It took 6 months for them to come in and look at every line item on his P&L balance sheet. And then we took those line items and we started to target the ones that would do the most good for the company the quickest. And between 2008, 9, 10, and 11, when the industry was struggling greatly, not like it is today, but when it was struggling greatly, his operating ratio was 88 and the industry was 101 to 102. Now, what that means to those of you that don't understand the C-suite CFO talk, for every dollar, Tony was making 12 cents. The rest of the industry was losing 2 cents for every dollar. Now I went to chat because artificial intelligence is so popular nowadays. I went to chat and I said, okay, chat, what were the real ORs back then? Help me replace my memory with that. Well, it can only go to public information. And the four or five biggest publicly traded companies at the time, when Tony was running an 88, consistently running an 88 operating ratio because of what he had done during bad times, the top 4 to 5 companies in the industry were running anywhere from 92 to 97. So, 4 points was the worst increase he had over his nearest competitors out there. So this is a critical thing to be taken a look at. You've already heard some really good, insightful information on how do you target, how do you do things. So now I want to apply it to something simple because it's not just always direct. This slide really, this next part of the presentation really talks about miscommunication within companies. So let me give you an example. I mean, miscommunication in the trucking industry is worse than a Hallmark movie. Now, that gets a laugh too in front of a live audience. See, the owner and president of a company, they want the same thing the safety director wants. And the recruiting director wants the same thing. They want to recruit safe, good drivers. They don't want accidents. They don't want to have costly accidents. They don't want to have fatalities. The C suite doesn't want that. The recruiting director doesn't want that. The safety director doesn't want that. Maintenance doesn't want it. But they want the same things, but they all speak different languages. And if you don't have them communicating properly, then you get cross communication or miscommunication and you get things out of line. So let me just take a simple thing like driver turnover, just as an example. Now, I want to run down the P&L and balance sheet with the driver turnover and how we analyze things. When we take it to the second level, how you analyze things and really get a bigger bang for your buck for a company. I don't know if that number is accurate or not. I mean, those of us who've been in the industry for a long time, we've been in it 26 going on 27 years. We have heard, $8 to $12,000 cost to replace a driver, hire, acclimate, and lose a driver inside of 90 days. We've heard 8 to 12,000 for 20 years. I have no idea. I was on a conference call 2 days ago with a gentleman out of Canada, and he said, "Oh, 5 to 15,000." But let's just assume that's the right number. So let me talk about the hidden cost of turnover. In this slide, this is a very powerful slide. As a matter of fact, if I were y'all, I would ask to get a copy of this slide because when I first saw this information, it was at a Great West symposium. And I asked them if they would share the slide with me. I asked them about 10 or 11 times, and they kept going, "Oh, yeah, we'll share that with you." And I never got the slide. I'll be more than happy to share the slide with you. Take a real close look at this slide. Your first year accident, by the way, Great West slide, I believe, said 60 to 70% of the accidents that are at your company are caused by the first year employee, not first year driving a truck, first year employee. I could go back and find the information that proved 50%. I talked to risk managers, I talked to underwriting directors, I've talked to operations people, and I've looked on the internet and I've done my research. I can find 50% easily. That is still a high stat. So I want you to really think about this. I don't care how much experience your driver has. They could have driven for the last 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. When they come to your company first, that first year, it is their behavior that causes the accidents, and they are outside of their element. They may have driven a Peterbilt for the last 5 years, but now you bring them into a Freightliner. They're used to going to accounting in a different area. They are not in their comfort zone behaviorally. Now, what's interesting about this graph, it's not just truck drivers. Remember the gentleman I was sitting next to and talking to about ambulance drivers and helicopter pilots and airplane pilots? They transport people, obviously, for the medical community globally. They had 30,000 employees. He confirmed his graph and said that's the same thing, whether they're driving an airplane, a helicopter, or a truck for the first time. This graph speaks volumes about what's happening. So turnover, let's link it back to turnover. turnover has a lot to do with your accidents, your safety record. And so all the safety directors sitting out there going, how do I get them to hire safer drivers? Well, it's got to be culturally at the entire company level, and the entire company from the C suite, from the president, from the owner, all the way down to the janitor needs to understand the mission and needs to speak the same language. And the way you do that is to make sure everybody communicates in the same language. We have an issue around here right now. We're wanting to find out, you know, what is 24/7, 365 people answering the telephone service actually mean? And we're making sure that everybody is going to communicate it the exact same way at our company. And the only way you can do that is to make short, sweet, to the point assignments and reminders day in and day out for the next 12 months. And everybody then will be on the same page. But if you look at this graph, this has everything to do with what's happening in this industry. Now, I've put this graph side by side with that's our version of a bell curve, and it kind of looks like a 1520 uh, Chinese warrior, a samurai warrior out there, but the helmet. But this is a bell curve. That graph is telling us 90% of the trucks running up and down the road today are spending $18,000 on their auto liability annually. Now, if you're safer, you move to the left of the bell curve, and it's going to be somewhere around $4,000 to $5,000, $6,000, particularly if you're involved in a captive. If you're not as safe, you move to the right side of the bell curve, and you're looking at 30, 40,000. There are companies out there that are trying to keep their doors open, paying 35 to 40,000, or getting canceled. I want you to think about that number, and I want you to look at the graph on the left. Can you connect the dots and see how closely related they are? If you don't have a dynamic orientation that makes people feel comfortable, if you don't work on your retention, then you're going to see insurance rates go up. To me, this is very powerful. By the way, we actually have clients that have reduced in this era where their insurance rates are going up 12 to 48% annually. We have clients that are actually reducing their insurance cost. Now, those of you that self-insure, doesn't matter. People say to us, oh, we self-insure. My next question is, what's your loss ratio? Because a loss ratio is what the insurance underwriters look at to determine how much they're going to charge you. And if you're doing your own underwriting up to a certain point of time, you self-insure up to 2 million, 5 million, 10 million, whatever your number is. If you're self-insuring, that means somebody in your company is looking at that loss ratio. And if you hire right and you orient right, you can cut down that 50% number dramatically, and you can cut down your turnover rate. So return on safety in action, make sure all of your people are on the same page. So let's talk about hiring. And the next slide I'm going to show you is probably the least important slide on the whole deck, but it's critical for hiring. So here's what I mean by red ocean hiring. The trucking industry, and webinars are not as good as live audiences, because live audiences, you can look at each other's feedback and you can feel from each other what they're doing or not doing. But when I'm standing in front of a live audience talking about this, red ocean hiring is, do y'all know the difference between red ocean and blue ocean? Red ocean is you've been in the industry so long, you've been doing it the same way for so long that now the sharks have figured out where all the fresh meat is, and they've just churned the water with everybody. Blue ocean is when you're doing something nobody else is doing. Well, if I start looking at recruiter advertising, you're all offering the same thing. And when you stand in front of a group and you say, how many of y'all offer more home time? All the hands go up. How many of y'all offer more miles, per month? All hands go up. How many of y'all? So you're creating a red ocean environment. What does that mean? That means that you're creating your own driver turnover. So the first thing I would do on the questionnaire, the first thing I want to know about your practices after we get all the basics on any questionnaire of how big are you, the blah blah blah, your structure, how many recruiters, how many dispatchers, all those types of things. I want to know what is unique about your company. What do you do that's different? What is different from your company versus all the other? And you go, well, we're all trucking companies. Yes, that's true. However, something you do is different. It could be what you haul, where you haul, how you haul. It could be if you're going to horse of a different color. And I'll go to the next slide here in a second. I want to run through these real quick. Orientation. We've talked about the power of orientation. The first year drivers are causing the accidents. You've got to make sure that their safety behavior, their behavior at your company, that they psychologically feel like they are part of your environment from day one. And that is as simple as making sure everybody knows their name. That is as simple as making sure that everybody smiles, which, by the way, my wife accuses me of having a kind of a resting bastard face because I have that scowl naturally. But always smile. And I feed from my own trough. We have new employees here, and I'm smile big and learn their names, and I welcome them in the company. And when you're walking around the hallways, you just make sure people, it is the simple little things. Look, it's simple. Clarify and simplify. That is how you win. Let's talk about dispatcher. Who talks to your driver? See, drivers, employees don't leave companies. They leave bad managers. They leave bad conversations. Let that sink in. Who talks to your people? Your dispatchers. And it's even worse nowadays. They bang out on the keyboard. They're sitting there banging out on that keyboard. And if they don't put a smiling emoji or a heart emoji or a ha ha, then that can be taken any way the driver wants to take it. If you're not keeping numbers, if you're not training, if you're not making sure that your dispatchers are using, I'm going to quote unquote and show my age here, the Dale Carnegie of dispatcher training, how to win friends and influence people. If you don't have them doing that, then you are missing the boat because that keys into your turnover rate, that keys into your accidents, that keys into your insurance. We were the first ones that came out. We hired Dan Baker. I don't know how many of y'all remember Dan Baker. 10 years ago, I said Dan Baker, and 90% of the people in the room knew who he was. Last week, I was in Miami and I made a presentation to 11 companies. Only two people knew who Dan Baker was. Dan was a tremendous personality in the trucking industry, did more good for driver relationship with companies than anybody out there. And we hired Dan to put together a 52-week program to teach dispatchers how to be friendlier. And it worked so well, we did 3 years worth of program. And it worked so well that we are redoing the entire program right now to make it modern and to make it with the keyboard, the emojis, the fun stuff that we have to do nowadays to make sure that these younger generation of new drivers that are coming in, that we can actually communicate properly with them and adapt the Dale Carnegie to the new generation. 401k. I asked this question, and out of about 600 people that I've pitched this to, I've probably only had about 4 or 5, generally from the HR department, that know the number. How many people, how many of your drivers, how many of your employees participate? What percent participate in the 401k? Do you promote the 401k? Do you educate them about the 401k? Do you tell them that if they start with you at age 23, 25, and they participate in the 401k and they put that money away, and with your match over the next 25 years, they can become a millionaire? Do you train them in those areas to make them want to stay with you? Most people cannot answer what percentage of their fleet or drivers are involved in the 401k. Why is it critical? Because once somebody gets involved in the 401k, they are 35% less likely to leave your company. Do you see the power of communication from department to department to department on the same page? I mean, safety directors, their KPIs are CSA scores. Yeah, the C-suite's KPI is, are we making money or not? The recruiting director's KPI is basically, how many empty trucks do I have? HR is how many people are involved in the 401k. How many people can we make sure that the benefits are there? Do you see how all of this comes into play to retain your fleet, to retain your drivers, and cut your cost over time? By the way, All of the studies, go back to the fuel example, all of the studies show that if you want to reduce your accidents, drive more fuel efficiently. A fuel efficient driver, based on all of the studies, and I can pull the studies up for you if you want me to, based on all of the studies, have less accidents. Fuel efficient drivers have less accidents. You kill two birds with one stone. You get more fuel efficiency and you cut down on your accidents and you improve your bottom line. See, one of my big complaints about the industry, we're spending all this money on technology, and it's the behavior of your employees that makes all the difference in the world. And that comes down to all of this comes down to culture. Culture is critical. Dan Baker, who I love Dan Baker, and he used to tell the story about JB Hunt. And I'm not picking on JB Hunt, but Dan used to tell the story about JB Hunt. They get a brand new driver, they bring him in there, they put him on orientation, and this brand new driver, he's gone through the driver test, he's gone through orientation, he's really proud. He jumps in that truck and he takes off down the road, and he's putting his miles in, and he's got on that JB Hunt t-shirt and that JB Hunt cap, and he is all excited about working for JB Hunt. And he pulls in that first truck stop over there, and he is full of the JB Hunt story and the JB Hunt culture, and he's really excited. He's got that smile on his face. He's got a whole new career. And he walks in, and there's three old JB Hunt drivers sitting over there, and they look at him and they say, "Hey, we can tell by that hat and that t-shirt that you're brand new at JB Hunt. Come over here and let us tell you what it's really like at this company." That has everything to do with culture and messaging from the top down. And when I say top down, I mean down, all the way down to the janitor. When we have contests in our company, we make sure every employee knows who we are and what we do. What is our talking point? What is our elevator pitch? That is what we drill into our people. And we have games to do it with. We've gamified our system. We have games to do all this stuff with. If it's not embedded, and if the top doesn't do it, we've got a couple of CEOs and presidents of companies on this call. If y'all aren't doing it, your company's not going to do it. It is that simple. If you're not doing it, if your leadership's not doing it, they're not going to do it. So this is the least important slide in the entire presentation, 6 human needs. If you'll get your HR department, your recruiting department to really take a look at this, if they want to call us and ask us more about this, we'll go into more detail with them. But every human being in the world has 6 basic human needs. I don't care what language you speak. I don't care what culture you're from. We all speak we all have the 6 same human needs. Now, we rank them differently, but I want you to think about red ocean, blue ocean right now. If you're saying more miles and you are trying to hire drivers that have certainty as their number one value, do you think they're going to stay? You're better off if you have an average of 9,200 miles per month, you're better off recruiting drivers with certainty by saying, we guarantee you 8,300 miles a month. And if they get 9,200, great. That's a nice, pleasant surprise. But if you'll start thinking about if significance is your number one or number two, then how do you reward your drivers? And I'm not talking about financial, and I'm not talking about, I'm talking about attaboys. I'm talking about, hey, girl, you did a really good job out there. I'm talking about patting them on the back, recognizing what does your culture say about your retention. So learn what these are. And generally, this slide for safety directors doesn't mean as much, for CEOs doesn't mean as much, but all the HR and the recruiting people that see this, most of them want a copy of the slide and they want to go use that and start talking about this. This is really powerful information for that particular department. 401k participation, 35% improvement and this is in the trucking industry. 35% improvement in the turnover rate for the people that are actually participants versus non-participants. Be glad to share this entire slideshow with y'all. I referenced earlier that we had a client. We have clients, numerous clients. This client was on the verge of going out of business, and they let us do a case study on them. They were on the verge of not being insured. And they basically came and said, "Help, what do we do?" Well, we have a protocol. Our protocol is real simple. And I'll actually, anyone that wants to have a conversation, I'll give you a money back guarantee. If you follow our protocol, that you will see improvement in your safety. You will see improvement in your P&L and your balance sheet if you follow our protocol. And our protocol is simple. It is really simple. See, I like simplify and clarify, and that's what makes it work. That's what makes execution possible. Simplify and clarify. Our protocol is real simple. You need to assign one video training session per week. And you go, oh, one a week. That's way too much. No, short and sweet and to the point. Ours average less than 6 or 7 minutes a week, but it's the 15-year-old son story. You're reminding them over and over and over again. Logistics warehouse, that's what they did. In 5 years, they joined a captive. They went from on the verge of not being insurable and out of business to in a captive in 5 years. And anyone that tells you that you cannot, that you can go do this overnight, you can't. It's going to take time to get into a captive. It's going to take time to get the underwriters to buy into it. It's going to take time. Now, if you're self-insuring, you can start seeing some results immediately. You start putting the fuel efficiency program into place. You know, reach out to us. I can walk you through, whether you're using us or not, I can walk you through how to do this. Our objective is to educate the marketplace, and we feel like if we educate the marketplace, that we will get more and more people to join our company because we are thought leaders in the industry. I just want you to think different. Make your safety capital productive. I just showed you a path that we walked down to reduce accidents, and it's 5 or 6 different areas. It's not just on the safety director. It's on the recruiting director. It's on the C-suite. It's on recruiting. It's on maintenance. We haven't even talked about maintenance. One of the things, when Tony improved his operating ratio so much, he spent hours pouring through the maintenance records. And then we would go in and start training. I'm not a maintenance guy. So when we first walked into one company up in New York and they had a 13-point check that they wanted to do on a battery, I was shocked. I kind of look at it, make sure there's water in it, and see if it's charged. 13 points is what they had. Another company had 17 points on a battery. Every company, you may be in transportation and 90% of you may be the same, but every company has something that's different about you, that's different about the way you operate, and it needs to be embedded into your culture. So think different. Make your safety capital productive. And that's what we do better than anybody else because we invented the way to make safety pay. That is not just a line item here. That is not just a saying here. We actually buy into that. We believe it. We do it ourselves. Remember that $12,000 story? I'll go into more detail of that one if anyone wants to call me on the side. We're about to wrap it up because I don't like long shows. The biggest obstacle between what is and what ought to be. And I want you to think about your own personal life, as well as your company, as well as your department. The biggest obstacle between what is and what ought to be is execution. That's what we do better than anybody else. We have 24/7. Right now, we don't, but we will within the next 4 weeks have 24/7, 365 real people answering the telephone so that your people have no excuses. Execution. Our client service is second to none. They pick up the phone. They know that if your people don't participate, you do not get results. Our client service reaches out to your people and they make sure our system's intuitive. It's as simple as 1, 2, and 3. You can operate it yourself. However, our clients get a call every 2 weeks. They get communicated with the way you want to be communicated with, and you're kept informed. Simple as 1, 2, 3 is: can you create an assignment? Can you create a user? Can you create an assignment? Can you assign it and look at the records to see if they've done it? That's as simple as it gets to get started with, and our people walk you through that. Hold your hand through it, or you can do it yourselves. Execution, execution, execution. That is what makes us number one for return on safety. So here's my final slide. It is time to execute. Identify, model, and deploy with our system. Here's my shameless ad now. If you're a prospect, text me and we will give you a free trial. No questions asked. We will plug you in. We will let you on the system. We will put you up on it. We will download all of your people. We will do whatever you want to do. We will let you have full access to it for 30 days. No risk. You get to kick the tires and see the deal. If you're one of our existing clients, text me for a detailed questionnaire to uncover what are your top 3 areas to improve through better training. We have a questionnaire, and that questionnaire is once, like I said, I alluded to it earlier. Once we go through the basics of that questionnaire of who are you, what's the size, how many dispatchers, how many recruiting people, how many truck drivers, do you run tandems, do you run teams, where do you run, all those types of things, how many terminals, what do you haul, what, once we get through the basics, then we start to uncover what kind of records do you keep? What is your fuel efficiency? What are your CSA scores looking like? What do you need to improve on the most? Where are you hemorrhaging money? Can you picture your best mechanic? How do we model that mechanic? See, one of the things Tony did that we learned from was he poured through the amount of time it took them to go repair a transmission. And if it was 12 hours, he would bonus the people that could do it effectively and efficiently in 10 hours. And he trained up the ones that were taking 13 or 14 hours and trained them up or got them out. Now, nowadays, you and I both know that mechanics are so hard to come by. You have to train them up because you cannot afford to get rid of a mechanic. So, this is our call to action. This is our shameless ad. Text me for the free trial, and existing clients, text me for the detailed questionnaire, or actually call me and I'll walk you through it. Lydia, do we have any questions? Do we need to do
No
anything before we
questions
wrap it up?
from the mornings, but that is Jay's real cell phone number. So, take advantage. Text him, call him. Um, and I'll come take the phone away if we need to get him back to work. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Like I mentioned before, we'll send the replay. We'd love to hear from you. This is actually a really fun process for us to get in and help identify and model, because it's what we do best. It's what we do well, to set up these kind of modeled training plans that really focus on an area that's going to have a big impact. We like results, so it's fun for us over here. So we'd love to take a look with you. But barring that, it's such a good practice for you to do within your company. And it's hard to get all departments together, but it is so worth it. The Tony story alone, 830,000 in one year. And everyone, again, thank you. We appreciate your time and see you on the next one. Take care.
Thank y'all.